Alright, so tonight I didn't have a lot of time, so I didn't get a lot of games in, but I jumped into the tournament, or like the practice tournament room on MTGO, and decided to play a quick game. It's not a 2 of 3, it was just a one-off game, but it was really turned out to kind of go directions that were I had never really played in Standard lately, so it was kind of fun. So I kind of wanted to like do a little deck tech really quick on my deck, and then show the game. That was a lot of fun. Originally, what I have here is an Esper build. Esper, it's mostly around the Geist of St. Draft. I have a 3 of on that, and then the Spectral Flights, which is for quite a while that deck was just the thing. But where I originated with the deck and what kind of drove me toward the Esper Bant on this and not the Bant version of this were the charms. So there was Orzhov Charm and the Azorius Charm that I had in this deck originally and was playing with them, but I found that the Azorius Charm, pretty much all I ever used it for was to draw a card. It was really, really rare I used it for anything else, and usually when I did it was too late. So I cut them out, slowly started evolving into the deck there. I found that outside of enchantments, my early game was really poor, particularly with some of the cards that are currently in Standard, like the Voice of Resurgence and the Reckoner, Boros Reckoner. Just my early game was really suffering against aggressive decks like that. So what I ended up doing to combat that was the Typhoid Rats, just because it's a 1-drop, 1/1 with Death Touch, and they really seem to hold off, like the Boros Reckoner, unless they have removal, which generally they do. But they come in, hit the rat, and I'll get pinged for 1, but they'll lose their creature. So the Boros Reckoner ends up stalling until either I find an answer to the Reckoner, say with a Orzhov Charm, or dropping the Sphere of Safety, or they manage to get rid of the rat. So usually it's the latter, but Judge's Familiar is in the deck to kind of help me against the control decks a little bit later and make sure that they're doing their math right. The mana that I have here is an interesting take on the mana. I do have all the shock lands, so I could have a different blend with these lands, but you'll see that it's primarily a lot of the core set and Innistrad duels. So it has a requirement of either having a Plains Island or Swamp in play for those cards not coming to play tapped. So usually a lot of these decks are playing like full 12 of the Shocklands. So you'd see Hollowed Fountains, Godless Shrines in their mix. And in this case, I chose not to do that. I only have 4 Hollowed Fountains, 2 Godless Shrines, and then everything else is the core set, or core and Innistrad dual lands. I don't know, when I was putting this together, I've been trying to build it with the idea of this is something I would play with my friends. Well, it's way more aggressive than that, but particularly with the mix of cards, as I just didn't want to rely on only Shocklands. I don't know. There's just something about full suite of Shocklands that just felt not right, I guess. So I wanted to be able to, like, with 1 Plains, I could just do pretty much anything and keep the pace. So that's why I have the mana the way I do. I've run into lots of cumbersomeness with it, and I think that I can redress it and perfect it. But right now it's a little rough. It's a little rough. Sideboard, you see down here, Dispel. Just overall against control decks. Rest in peace for Junk Reanimator, or just any of the Reanimator decks that are being played right now. Blind Obedience against aggressive decks. Fiend Hunter, Oblivion Ring, and Detention Sphere. All those things are kind of general purpose, but Fiend Hunter really helps against aggressive decks as well. Late game, Drug Skull Reaver. I don't have much of a late game with this deck. Sphere of Safety helps me, but if they end up removing all the creatures that has my enchantments at play, That's where I really got to bring in the Oblivion Rings and the Detention Spheres to help out with that. This as a late game. So, that being said, here's the game that I played a little earlier tonight that I found really interesting. There was some fun stuff that happened in it. Ugh, dang it. Did it again. Let's jump back here and play this game. Let's see, I did that earlier. Okay, here we go. So, I win the die roll. And this was my opening hand. Looking back on this now, it was a huge mistake to probably throw this hand away. I had a 1-drop. I had counter backup for whatever they end up pulling out on either their turn 2 or turn 3. It depends on what kind of deck they're playing. You know, usually you're seeing with the Naya builds, you end up seeing Burning Tree Shamans into Flint Hoof Boars and just running through. So this is usually meant to counter that last spell there. But turn 3, particularly with those Naya decks, they're dropping a Reckoner, and you usually need to stop that quick and early. My mistake in this, well, and turn 3 here, Silverblade Paladin. Overall, I mean, this was a very good hand to keep, and I chose not to. I got the plains. There's no lands going to be entering tapped in this scenario, and I unfortunately pitch it because of the Temporal Mastery. I wanted that miracle, and I knew that I probably wouldn't get to turn 7 to do it, so I should have kept this hand. So I'm mulligan down to this, which is, Geist of St. Traft, Spectral Flight, Vampire Nighthawk, Redirect, Darn Catacomb, and Liliana. 1 land. And I'd come into play tapped, and who knows what I would draw after that, so there's just no way I could keep this either. Either. There's no way I could keep this, so pitched it. Which brought me to this hand. Sorin, Essence Scatter, and Defang. No turn 1, no creatures, really. But this is what I ended up going with. So, enter tap. Oh, he's playing Swamps, and now comes the Thrall Parasite. Thrall Parasite's one of those ones I played with early because I really like the idea of being able to remove a counter from a creature, but Standard really has not been Planeswalker heavy. They've had Planeswalkers as backups and things like that, but you've never really seen any builds that really relied on a Planeswalker to get them through the game. So I've seen it in use, but not effective. And the best part of this card, which you will see in full display in this game, is the Extort. The Extort triggers in this game get intense. So here I chose to play the Hallowed Fountain and pay the 2 to bring it out untapped because of the Essence Scatter. I don't know what he's about to drop on turn 2. So I was just a little worried about that. He plays a Gravecrawler, so there's no point in countering that because he'll be able to recurse it back. So I'm really happy that I'm keeping all of my land drops. I'm managing to pull land, and nothing's being overly disruptive. So Tragic slips my little Typhoid Rat so he can get those 3 hits in. And here I drew, I have the 4 land. Could have dropped Sorin, Lord of Innistrad, and dropped out a token, but we're far enough into the game that I wanted to switch a little bit this and try to gain some control over it. And I felt like this was more a response to their action than actually doing something that would try to control the game a little bit, even maybe on a mental state. So, which is exactly what happens. He drops a Drolf's Messenger, and that would enter the battlefield, tap, hit me for 2, untap, swing for 3, potential of 5. When I don't really have a creature at this point, I guess I could have a blocker, but still there'd be a big presence on the board, noting that I don't have a lot of removal in the outside of the sideboard. So I quickly Essence Scatter that. He still gets his Extort trigger in and swings for 3, so I'm down to 8. So I pull a Geist, and I could have played it at that point, but I was more worried about blocking, and really, again, I'm desperate at this point to gain control of the game because I'm really behind. He's nothing but well ahead of me, so I decided I needed to stop the bleeding by building a chump that either he had to remove or I would be able to take one of those out and gain life off of it. So I'll pull out my little lifelink vampire, and he responds with a Disciple of Bolus, where he's going to start filling his hand, of course, killing off his grave call or sacrificing his grave callers. Now comes a little Rue Faith Menders. I call him Rue just because I like Cajun food. I don't know how you say that. It can't be Rocks. Is it Rocks Faith Mender? It probably is because he's a rhino. He's a rock. But anyway, I call him the Rue Faith Mender. Here he pulls out a Desecration Demon. Token decks, usually, a Desecration Demon it's a serious card. But against tokens, I can just keep sacking to it, keeping him tapped, and whenever he played a Desecration Demon here, I just did not feel a presence of it, so I wasn't too worried. Of course, with a defang and arrest, really is no worry on him. So I arrest Desecration Demon and give myself an emblem to help with the life gain that I so desperately need. So at this point, I've kind of evened up the game, but he starts filling his hand with Sign of Bloods. And so see the extort triggers are beginning to mount steadily. I draw Liliana of the Veil. Part of my decision here and what I'm casting is I do cast Liliana over Geist of St. Draft, is that I knew that he just played the Sign of Blood. So he just drew 2 cards. He's got 4 in hand. And I believe his follow-up to that was only to play a Thrall Parasite because that's what the mana is that he had left the previous turn. So if he either has, garbage in his hand or he has some good stuff in there. And it seemed to me that he played the Thrall Parasite for the Extort trigger. I just felt like there was a good chance that that wasn't all junk. So that was the decision there. Is I chose to play Liliana to strip his hand over getting Geist and getting some beats in, and we'll see how that works. Ask him discard. I discard the Defang, and he discards a land, so junk. Trying to keep my life, retrieve my life back from him at this point. And he just keeps replenishing his hand over and over again. Just card advantage on his end has kept him in this game at this point. Well, it really helps. So here, as you saw, he starts to use the Thrall Parasites to the reason why they're around. Remove the counters from the Planeswalkers, gets rid of Sorin, but each time he does that, of course, he's taking 2 life. So he's down to 14. I'm at 24 now. So slowly I've come back up, and he seems to kind of be maintaining that zone of like 18 to 14. I swing in for more life, and I'm at 36. So he drops the Cryptghast on me, and now he has 4 mana at his disposal, and I no longer have a Liliana. 3 extort triggers right there off a Disciple of Bolus that fills his hand back up. He's now 8 cards in hand. And he decides to tragic slip the Rue Faith Mender, which is a really vital card that's kept me in the game. It's brought me back up to 36, so this is definitely the time to be using the redirect. Extort is an issue. But it's also on the Cryptghast, and the Cryptghast is what's fueling the Extort triggers, because he has more lands than I have, but he's dropping a lot of spells a turn, and he is using the extra swamps off that with the Cryptghast and the Extort triggers. So I make the decision to redirect that tragic slip onto his Cryptghast. He still gets all those Extort triggers, of course. And Silverblade Paladin. I choose to drop the Geist of St. Trapp so that I would have advantage on the next attack. But at this point in the game, he has 6 cards in hand and a lot of mana. One of the things that I wasn't really factoring into my plays at this point, where I was Silverblade Paladin over Geist of St. Trapp, I mean, a double striker on the ground would probably have helped me more here, but was just the sheer amount of card advantage that he's generating each turn, what the extort triggers are doing in order to enable him to do more Sign of Bloods, which you'll see here. And I just didn't really factor that in. So he drops Thrall Parasite with 2 extort triggers, and then Desecration Demon into 3 extort triggers. And I choose not to sack. Spectral Flight, great card. Do I play it now? Swing when we have a Desecration Demon and sack the Vampire in order to tap it to get through. Possibly. I chose not to go that route. I chose to drop the Silverblade Paladin and not soulbind it to the Geist of St. Trapp. I don't know if that was a mistake. Now when I look at this game, the reason why I did not is I wanted to soulbind against the Angel token that comes into play each turn, so that I'm double striking for 8 and not like 6 on the ground where he has a ton of blockers and can be doubling up. I wanted to keep the heavy attacks in the air, so that's why I chose to not soulbind. The extorters are really stacking up here. He's 12 life, 36. And he gets out a sack engine, this Blood Throne Vampire. It's a great card. Such a combo creator. So he managed to drop enough creatures and pay enough of the extort triggers that he is now at 16 life, which puts him 1 shy of what I intended to do. I could hit for 15 points of damage at this point. And here's where it is. I Soulbind with the Angel and Silverblade Paladin. So Angel will be hitting for 10 in the air, and the Geist is hitting for 5 in the air as well. So 15, sacking the Vampire to tap the Desecration Demon. Double blocks on the Silverblade Paladin. I think that was a mistake. I don't think he understood that it had double strike as well. And my last was the defang. So an important thing to note here before we get into the madness that ensues. He's at 1 life, and I'm at 30 life. We're on turn 12, I think. Yeah, we're on turn 12. And let's see where we sit when we hit either my turn 12 or turn 13, I'm not sure which it is. So 4 extort triggers when he plays a Doralf Messenger. So that's for 6 life that he just hit me for. More Sign of Bloods, more card advantage, 4 more triggers. Another Sign of Blood. So many extort triggers. So when he drops this Blood Artist, I'm not worried, because granted he still has 6 mana at his disposal, 3 cards and a Blood Artist, but he doesn't have a sacrifice engine at this point. Well, I take that back. He did. Next up is the Blood Throne Vampire, another one of them. So now we're in a little bit more dangerous territory. And he pulls out a second Blood Throne Vampire. So, last card in hand, Thrall Parasite. So when the Thrall's hitting, there are 4 extort triggers that are hitting, which has been the case in each one of these spells. So for each spell he's casting, I'm losing life, but at this point he'd use up all his mana to play all those spells. Vampire Nighthawk. Yeah. So the minute my turn starts, he starts sacrificing. He's now at 2 life. And when he sacrifices Dral's Messenger, it dies, goes to the graveyard, comes back out with an Undying counter on it, and he utilizes the Thrall Parasite to take off the counter, then resack it. So each time Dral's Messenger is coming out of play and back into play, he's using the 4 extort triggers, and then it's hitting the battlefield and doing 2 points of damage as well to me on all of that. So I'm down to 16 life now. He's used 2 of his thralls. He has 2 more still that he can utilize in recursing the Dral's Messenger. I'm down to 9 life when he uses the last thrall. So he starts sacking the thralls to the Blood Artist. 5, 4, 3, 2, and we are down to 1. So, end of the turn, he's at 10, and I'm at 1, and we are moving into, what turn are we at? So I think this was all of that was on this turn, whatever turn this is. But it all happened on 1 turn. Everything swung around. So here's where he gets mistaken. I don't even think that I don't know what he was thinking. I think he keeps forgetting the Silverblade Paladin, this double strike, but I don't know why he could block, because of Spectral Flight. Like, even the Paladin? Like, well, the Paladin isn't blocking. Oh. So, managed to win that one, but it was really, really close. 1 turn ago, I was at 30 life. It's a fun little deck. I mean, his deck was really working well, but I mulliganed poorly. And then additionally, I don't have a lot of board wipe in this deck, particularly on round 1. But fun game overall.